The question, how would you describe the writing tone of a millennial? Millennials do not, as a whole, have a distinctive voice in writing. It's doubtful whether different generations ever do, although one could plausibly make the argument that different centuries have their own voices in writing. That being said, there is a particular writing style that, while not universal, is certainly common among millennials, not only in popular writing but also on social media, and it has, regrettably, influenced both. I call it the hipster drone. The hipster drone is a pastiche of 20th century postmodern writing, think Bukowski or Burroughs, with folk writ that is very obviously not backed by lived experience. There are certain young people who present as bohemian street urchins making their way. In the rundown world of urban America, a shaggy college kid collapsing on his futon after a long day of classes while indie rock plays in the background, such people would probably feel better about themselves if their ostensibly precarious lives were authentic and not lived against the backdrop of a robust upper-middle-class support network. Not everyone who writes in the hipster drone is this way, but there is probably a correlation. The hipster drone is familiar from soy boy-infested online news popular among millennials, Fox, Vice, all that garbage. The tone is, generally, moralizing, with generous use of vulgarity even when written semi-formally. The vulgarity is a good example of why it's the hipster drone. The attempted shock value of throwing fuck and shit into a piece written in an otherwise journalistic tone loses the power of jarring contrast after a few minutes, and the emotion it's meant to convey is thoroughly unconvincing. It would sound appropriate coming from the mouth of a sickly liberal arts student with gauged ears and a high nasal voice, complete with a faint lisp and an iPhone. The content is typically moralizing nonsense, and the tone reflects this. Overused curse words come across as a hollow gesture meant to convey the anemic masculinity of some tool who thinks masculinity is toxic. Accordingly, analytic pieces written in the hipster drone consist of regurgitated left-wing talking points wrapped up in some half-digested continental philosophy gotten third-hand from a course in women's studies, artless but delivered with a kind of fervor that can only be found in a useful idiot. Not all millennials write in the hipster drone, of course. Some of them write in a quasi-academic style with occasional poetic flourishes, either because they're pretentious or because they know their audience. One gets the impression that such writing comes from a clinical and detached standpoint and that the self-conscious writerly flourishes are deliberately calculated to make the author's ideas more palatable. It's a philosopher's dead earnest spiced with wry digressions and an irony that lies more in tone than content. For the life of me, I can't remember the last example I saw of this.